Okay, colleagues, without any due delay, since the session starts at 2 p.m. For me here in the US, it is 8 a.m. So let's go ahead and we start our session. We already have a good audience, I think, for a session. So the first speakers are the authors of the paper, Problem of Semantic Enrichment of Sentences Used in Textual Requirement Specification. So if you kindly introduce yourself, who are the authors of the first paper and who will be the speaker? I assume, David, you will be speaking, right?
Exactly. Okay, so thank you. So I am going to share my screen and let's start the presentation. Okay, perfect. So I assume that you can see my screen, you can hear me. So good morning or good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is David Šenkýř, and together with my supervisor, Professor Petr Kroha, we are tackle the domain of requirement specification written in textual in natural language. And we also tackle some conceptual modeling that is behind the requirements and stuff around that. We are both from Faculty of Information Technology from Czech Technical University in Prague. And the topic of today's presentation is problem of semantic enrichment of sentences that are used in the textual requirement specification. So let's start with some domain introduction and motivation. First, the concept of semantic similarity between two sentences. The evaluation of the semantic similarity between two sentences belongs to the most important task in the natural language processing and the derived topics like information retrieval, text mining, or some query answer systems. From the linguistics point of view, or from the point of view of linguistic systems, when we have two sentences, the best ranking regarding the similarity has the sentences that are the same. So the sentences that have the same meaning. But that's okay when you are searching something and you found exactly what you type in the search engine, that you are happy because what you are looking for. But sometimes you are also looking for something else, some new information. So from this point of view, we can talk about some semantic enrichment, and that's our goal, to find some extended information to some existing sentence, for example. But we would like to exclude the same sentences. Our goal is not to find exactly the same on some page. We are looking for extension. And how it's connected to the requirement specification. So the requirement specification in the nature language is common practice because nature language is understandable to all participants, at least we hope. So analysts can understand the text, the customer can understand the text. So that's the benefit of nature language, but of course it has also some drawbacks. And the drawbacks are some requirement smells, somebody can call it like that. And it's typical issues of ambiguity, incompleteness, or inconsistency. These are topics that we faced in the past years. And the semantic enrichment is connected to this area because typically when we have some incompleteness, we're missing some part of information. Or ambiguity means that we use different terms for the same stuff, like synonyms, etc. So that's the connection to the requirement specification in the texture form. And let's show some example. Because my professor and we are both musicians. So some time ago, we found this application. It's some online application that can generate chords for you. So you just specify the chord that you would like to generate the tones for it. The application generates for you. As you can see at the bottom of the picture, there is this red arrow with the notice. It says that all chords are calculated and therefore may not be really playable. If I ask you to create some software to generate the chords, he or she typically assume that you generate the chords that are playable, of course, and they can use it. So the question is if we can somehow support these default information. So let's see that we have some really very brief specification that says, okay, I would like some application that generates a given chord for some four-string instrument, for example. As I mentioned, there is some default consistency rules that are typically not mentioned because, yeah, the customer thinks in the way that, yeah, that's so obvious that everybody needs to know about that. But the question is if it's really so obvious every time. So in our example, the forgotten default consistency rules is that the chords should be playable. We can talk about some property of the chord. So let's say the playability should be a property of the chord. And what it means in the practice. In the practice means that if you play on some string instrument, you typically want to have different string. You don't want to put two tones on one. And there is some also real world limitation, like you have some hand span and you cannot extend your hand. So these are sometimes default, but maybe not for everybody. So our question is if we can somehow support the analyst for this given sentence and support him or her in the way to generate some hints that should be questioned for the customer. So how can we support it? Let's assume that we have the specification, the one sentence that you saw on the last slide. And now we need to select some keywords from the sentence. That's not a big deal. We just go through the nouns of the sentence, so we can get some collection. Let's say collection N with all nouns. For our example, we select the noun chord, and the next step is that for each noun from the point 1. From this collection of nouns, we can generate some pseudo questions because we are looking for some definition of these terms or for some extended information. So the pseudo question looks like, for example, like you can see in the slide. So there is some sentence in the form that chord is something, and there is some optional adjective that should have some property for the chord. Objects can help us with the definition of the chord. Another pseudo question should be that there is some beginning of the sentence with the subject, and there is continuing of the sentence that this start is called like a chord. And the third one is really simple, that there is only the subject chord and then is the rest that we would like to get information from that. So we can use these pseudo questions like the source, and we can look for sentences in this format. Where to find these sentences? So we need some sources. We need some textual documents. For our experiment, we use the search engine from Google that is programmable. You can define it that you would like to search for English sentences, and you can search through the web and get some web pages. There are also external sources like online dictionaries, for example, Wordnik or DBpedia, BabelNet. Wikidata is also a nice source where you can search for some entities and terms. And the last point, if you have some internal documents regarding the topic or some glossaries with definitions, so if they are available, that's also a perfect source, of course. So when we have these sources, we can search for the sentences in the format of pseudo questions that you see in the previous slides. So, for example, we can find some sentences like this one. We can find that chord is combination of 3 or more tones, so some new information. And there is the info that it sounded simultaneously. So you know that you need more strings to put there these tones. You can also see that in one sentence it's called simultaneously. In the second sentence it's called that the notes need to be sounded together. So these are examples of sentences that we are able to find from the Google search or from the dictionaries. And how to use it. We find the sentences and now we can typically cluster them. We can cluster them in the form of the pseudo question. So each pseudo question should be somehow seat of the cluster, and we cluster the similar sentences with the same semantic structure together. And then there is the phase that we would like to extract the information. So if I go a little bit back, so we have these rest of sentences including objects, or beginning of sentence including subject. These gray areas are the info that we can extract, and we can extend the basic information that we had at the start. Of course, it's not so easy in the way that there are the mentioned synonyms. So sometimes it's called like tones, sometimes it's called like notes. And as you can see in this example, these two sentences has exactly the same meaning. It's just the second is in the opposite form. Yeah, there is reversed object and subject. So this is the part of the extraction, and then there is the final part of enrichment. So now the tool can generate some hints for the analyst. So for example, we found in the web that chord is a harmonic set of notes. So we found the information that it's some notes and it's a harmonic set. So there is some hint that maybe should be answered. What does mean the harmonic set of notes? Or in the second example, that tones sounded simultaneously, or notes sounded together. We can see that there is the issue of the synonym, that tones and notes are in the same meaning in this example. So that's point to generate some hints for the analyst, and the analyst can work with that and ask the customer to clarify these open questions. How it looks like in the practice, there are some examples how it looks like the natural language parsing of the sentence. So typically it's used some part of speech, tagging like nouns, verb, determiners, etc. And what is really important is the relation between the verbs, because you can then see that there is something like nominal subject, so you can find the subject of the sentence, the object, etc. And in this example, you can see in the bottom part, in the sentence from Wikipedia, that there is some expansion for the original sentence, that we found the additional properties that the chord, the notes to be sounded simultaneously. By the way, for this natural language processing, we use a tool called Specification. You can find a link at the bottom of the slide to this tool. It's primary for Python, Python programming. So our tool is written in Python, and we use this tool for that. How it looks in the end. So we started from a really small sentence where we just found that there was a noun chord. And if we can look on these numbers, you can see that in this table we use just only the Google search via the programmable engine that we used for our purpose. And we found 80 sentences that containing this noun. In the second row, you can see that 30 sentences from that matching our pseudo question. So it's matching the structure that we assume for some definitions. Then we cluster the sentences based on the pseudo question, as I mentioned. We also found that there were two sentences that were already presented in some original requirements that we have. And then we can generate the hints. So that's the last line. You can see that we, in the first column, we generate 19 hints for the court. And the reasonable, that from our point of view, was only 6. Yeah, so we cannot say that it's perfect, but we are looking in the way that the tool can help and generate hints for analysts, and then K goes through, the analysts can go through and select the reasonable to question or to extend the requirements. The first column is only for the one noun. There is also possible extension looking for sentences that containing 2 or more nouns from the original requirements. So for just simple compare, we use court and featuring in the second column, and there are also numbers presented for this combination. And to conclude this presentation, we use this functionality in our tool that it's called TEMOS. It's acronym for Textual Modelling System. And as I mentioned at the start, we deal with some ambiguity, incompleteness in the text, and inconsistency. And the topic of this semantic enrichments can help us to find some new information that should be omitted in the original text. So thank you very much for your attention, and please feel free to ask now or contact me later if you have any questions or ideas to discussion. It's really welcome. So thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Two things, pleasant presentation, great work. And also it's always pleasant to see colleagues from CTU. It's a beautiful campus, a great university, and a very great location.
Thank you very much. Really great to hear that.
Yeah, and definitely the Faculty of Information Technology, in a very short time, you made tremendous progress, both educationally and also in image and reputation outside the university. David, let me see, in the chat we have, if you have any question, okay, that's, please unmute yourself. And if you have any question, colleagues, in the meantime that you are warming up or unmuting yourself, let me quickly ask a question. David, the requirement specification is a very important aspect because, as you said, there is always room for ambiguity, incompleteness, and inconsistency. Mm-hmm. And you basically, you presented an algorithm, and then you presented the case from the music domain. You just demonstrated how it will work, like if I'm using this algorithm. So basically, this algorithm is working when you are dealing with text, not with live people, not like when you are going to organizations and talking to people, but it's more on existing documentation or existing source of text.
Exactly. Yeah. The input, it's really some, it should be the first state of the requirements. It's not need to be the complete perfect requirements. Our mission is to really support the analysts to help the customer maybe to extend the requirements to have everything here and omit these issues if it's possible, of course. So we're looking on our tool like helping tool, to analysts.
So basically the input for your work or for your algorithm would be a textual source, whether it is a document, whether it's a website, or whatever, but that's the textual source is the input. Then your algorithm presents some specification by using those procedures that you described. Now, what I can do with the output, once you have the output, can I use this output? For what purposes I can use the output? Can I use it for developing a software application? Can I use it for developing an information system? What would be the purposes of using the outcome?
So primary, as you mentioned, the text is on the input. Then we can use the benefit of these days that we have a lot of online dictionaries and semantic networks that we can query and get some more info. And when these warnings that auto generate are somehow answered by analysts, so the text is updated, or analysts say, okay, I'm okay with these warnings, then our tool has some internal representation of these sparse sentences. And from this internal information, we are able to generate some draft of a simple class model. Or in the past, we also tried the demo model from the business ontology. So primarily, the purpose is analyst click the export button, he can export the main model where we can see what entities the automatic texture parsed and how these entities are connected, some relation between that. And it should be used like a really first version that should be then probably extended with the human knowledge. But at least the tool should help in the sense that the basic entities are pre-generated, the basic relations are pre-generated, and then the analyst can specify the details.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, David. That makes absolutely sense. Colleagues, if you have any question or any comments, or maybe some related works that you remember that, okay, this work may be a good source that I can suggest to David, or if there are any similar researches around that you would like to connect David, please open your mic. And the good use of after presentation is not necessarily you have to ask a very smart and sharp question. Any comments, any suggestions, or any like even pointing out opportunities would be appreciated.
Yes, Joseph, if I may, Pavel Molozhenkov, if I may ask a small question. David, thank you for your presentation. Really very interesting and very impressive. Just maybe two questions in one. Probably quite a traditional and typical for our workshop. So what are, to your mind, the most possible business applications of your research, and more in the specific business agility specification? So how could you apply your results and your research to this type of this side of business activity?
Okay, so this tool is already implemented. We have some proposals on our faculty webpage for that. And we really believe, let's say, that now the analyst, when first maybe talk to the customer for the really first version of the text requirements, the analyst can take the tool and put there, just copy paste the text here, wait some short time when the online dictionaries and sources are questioned, and use the hints. Yeah, so we assume that when the analyst talk to the customer, typically the customer is the domain expert in the field, because he works in the domain, and the analyst, it's typically on the side of maybe part of development, part of some software engineering business, and maybe he didn't know some stuff of the domain of the customer. So the goal is that the tools go through this online sources and maybe found some more properties for the entities, and maybe it helps that say, okay, there are some more properties for these entities that we don't discuss, so let's clarify these founded properties if to prevent some issues in the future. because as it's already known, typically repair some mistake and the start of the project is really cheaper than rework the whole software when you found that you're missing some use case. So that's how I see the application.
Great. Yes, David, thank you very much. But actually, yes, so what I was interested mostly in, and today in the second session, we have already assisted to one presentation of this kind. So when you can, let's say, apply the text analysis to the solving of one of the classic enterprise architecture problems is IT business alignment. So let's say the reason of incomprehending, right, between a business and IT managers probably can be also analyzed by your research and by the results that you present. So also this could be one of the most possible ways of further developing of your research. Thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, colleagues, participants? So since we have just 1 minute for this session, well, 1 minute is also over. So David, just in case if you come across user stories or the concept of user stories, to see how your application could also help to write user stories. So I'm glad that Pavel mentioned business agility, etc. So user stories are a concept that is basically a successor to requirement specification. When in a natural language, people, they talk, what do I need from the system? It's not like technical language, but a very natural language, people sees it, what I need. And that need description results in basically converting them into IT functionalities. Thank you very much once again. So we are moving to our next presentation, and the next presentation is adopting domain-specific interfaces using invariance mechanism. If you kindly, the authors, who will be presenting this paper? So the second paper is adopting domain-specific interfaces using invariance mechanism. Do we have the authors in the audience? And if yes, who will be presenting the paper?
Boris is scheduled to present the paper, but he's not in the webinar. And I've sent him a message, but yeah, just waiting for him to write back.
Perfect, perfect. We will see what happens in the next few minutes. So the third speaker is, or presentation is, usability evaluation of business process modeling standards, in particular BPMN and BORM case study is the subject of this paper. Do we have the authors in the audience? And if yes, who will be presenting? So the second paper, or the third paper of this session is usability evaluation of business process modeling standards.
Joseph Pavlicek is scheduled to give that, but yeah, it's not in the panel yet either. So
not in the webinar yet. Okay, perfect. So let me tell you what happened this morning. When I logged in, it asked for your name and email address. So I think I entered first time my my email address, and that took me completely to different session. Then by the end of the presentation, I realized that I do not recall this paper because I am familiar with the program, and at least I remember almost all the papers. And the session chair was a colleague from Germany. And I said, okay, probably something, let me log out and then log in. When logged out and log in with a different email address, then I landed in the right session. So that's what happened. So the reason I'm mentioning this is we can give benefits of doubt to the missing colleagues that they might have happened in the same situation. Okay, still checking if we have speakers for the 2 papers that are scheduled for this session. One paper is adopting domain-specific interfaces using invariance mechanism, and the second paper is usability evolution of business process modeling standards. Okay. I see the number of the participants are the same, so the number did not change. That means that we might end up to wait a little bit longer, or maybe even end up to not have the speakers. So, but we will use this time in a very useful way, regardless how long we will be waiting. So my question is to the audience. Since the name of this workshop is around agility, whether it's organizational level agility or just the business agility, that means that responding or delivering values to your customers outside your organization in a very nimble and agile and fast and expedited manners. I would love if you have any good points or some topics that you would like to raise so we can talk about it from agile perspective, and also how modeling or how models can be used as a means or as a tools for agile development. And also if you have any questions about what is this all agile? We do hear about agile and agility. Is this a framework? Is this a philosophy? Is it a mindset? Is it what is that body of knowledge encapsulating agile and agility? So please, let's use this time for some good discussion. So we will not just say that let's drop out and consider the session over. It will be, how to say, pity to do that.
Okay, maybe if I can take the word, maybe a connection once back to requirements, because this is our main topic. Really the agility, because I'm also a software developer. I'm both student and software developer in the company. So we also work as a benefit. There is also the drawback regarding this typical issue of text, because when you write some part at the January, then you write next part in the June, for example, or after some months. It's really good to have some glossaries, for example, to use the same terms and to somehow continue in a consistent way for the specification. It's maybe one of issue that I see in this, or one challenge in this agile specification for the whole project.
David, I have to confess that when you say that because I'm a software developer, from that point, I could not hear you until the last 5 seconds. So I pretty much missed your entire comment. From the point that you said, okay, I am also, because I'm in software development, and then you wanted to make a point and we missed the point all the way.
Okay. Maybe I try to stop the video to support my internet connection. Let's see. So hopefully it's better now. And
yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. My point was just about the stuff that in our company where I work as a software developer, it's really beneficial to somehow communicate with the customer in the sprints. So in this agile form that we have some short sprint, and we can update the requirements. And I just want to point it out that it's also a challenge to have this short sprint and updating the requirement for the project, because when you specify something, for example, in the January, and then you specify some other part in another months after that, it's really challenging to be somehow consistent regarding the terms and regarding the original idea. So I would like just to mention that I see the challenge in this way, in the requirements together in the agile way.
I think it's a very good point, David. I will try to comment on your the concerns that you are raising. I think through maybe back and forth, we will get whether I got the point properly. So a couple of things. Well, before commenting directly, in agile world, requirements are written from the voice of the users. That's why we call it user stories. Instead of saying that, let's say, instead of saying that the system allows assignment uploading, the system confirms if the upload was successfully. So instead of using this language, technical language, in Agile, we switch to using user voice. For example, this will be one requirement that I'm about to tell you. As a student, I want to be able to upload my assignment so I do not miss deadline if I can't go to the class. So in this sentence, this is my requirement. Or as a patient, I want to be able to make doctor's appointment online so I don't need to call and wait in the line, or I don't need to go to the office to make an appointment. Or let's say I give you a banking requirement. As a client of the bank, I want to see my balance online so I don't need to go and use my ATM or ATM machine for that. And you can make it more advanced. Obviously, these are obvious. You may say that they already exist, of course. And in Agile, requirements are written from somebody's voice. And when you are writing, you have to address three things in your: who needs this, what is needed, and why is needed. Like as a student, you immediately see in this requirement that, okay, this is for a student. And then what that student is. As a student, I have to be able to upload my assignment. That is the functionality now. So basically the application should allow me that I can upload mine. That's the functionality. And then I immediately move on and I tell you the value of it so that I do not miss my deadlines. And immediately I also attach value to that. Why I attached value? Because if there are 10 requirements like this, and David is the developer, and he has to decide which one should go first and which one, he can prioritize these requirements or these user stories based on the value it creates. Because I might also have a requirement such as a student, I want to be able to do video chatting with other students. And because I'm missing my friends or etc. Now David, because has all the three components. First, for whom is this? Okay, that's for a student. What that student wants, video chatting. Why that student is? Because he is missing his friends. Now he can decide between which one shall I prioritize first? Missing a friend, which is great from human emotional, but here is missing assignments. Which one has more value if I deliver it to the students? Which one students will be more delighted with the first one or the second one? that's one thing that I wanted to say before. Now coming back to, hey, I write something in January, then I come back and write something in June. If the question is about like how the value of the requirements will change, or how I will remember that, what does it mean what I was writing in January, or whether the question is about that there should be some consistency in terminologies, that if in January it was written a set of requirements by David, and in June Aika is coming and following up, so she doesn't have hard time to say what was in the mind of David when he was writing this, because I'm completely stranger to these concepts and terminology. Maybe some terminologies will help. I fully agree that some following some standards, some conceptual, how to say, foundation, or maybe some formats, some templates, it will help people to understand each other requirements, and even your own requirements, because remember 6 months ago you wrote something, and now 6 months later you are revisiting, and you cannot understand your own what was exactly.
That's a good point.
Unless there was extended notations and commentaries. So I would fully agree that yes, some templates, concepts would be helpful to better understand requirements written by different people. So
okay.
I'm just,
it seems that we have other, sorry.
I'm just checking if we have the authors of the two papers. One paper was scheduled for 2:30 to 3 p.m. and that is adopting domain-specific interfaces using invariance mechanism. And the second one, or the third one, I must say, in the session is usability evaluation of business process modeling standards. So
we have both authors now, speakers now.
Okay, who the third papers?
Yeah, so I think Boris is next, and Boris is here.
Please, Boris.
So yeah, hi everyone. Sorry for some problems with my connection, and I can't translate video right now. So because I have some lags in internet connection. So, but now I want to present you my presentation on adopting domain-specific interfaces using invariance mechanisms. So I want to focus on some new details which, combining with materials of our article, can create more widespread vision of our research. And I want to start with some questions which are interested and which are in focus of our work, then some details on context of our research, and finally solution design and some use cases connected with its implementation. So first of all, I want to stress that in focus of our research is domain-specific languages, which demonstrate a really convenient way for managing some tasks in proper application domain. So it means that domain-specific language is always based on some conceptual or maybe more formal model of our application domain. And as a result, it should have some coherent type of representation for such mechanism as domain-specific language. There are different types of DSLs, for example, textual, graphical, or some combination of it, which can be used for modeling tasks or for some programming tasks in our application domain. But all these types of domain-specific languages can be used in appropriate manner according to more general definition of domain-specific language, which was introduced in our research. We try to formulate this definition according to the idea that we can represent our application domain using such artifact as ontology, and especially application ontology, because we try to describe concepts which are relevant for some task in terms of our domain. And as a result, we want to use this type of ontology to represent some concepts of our application domain and relations between them. And the main question here is why and how we can organize a coherent existence of ontology and domain specific language, because it's known fact that any domain demonstrates a tendency to evolution during the time, and we should organize a bridge between the ontology, which is representation of our application domain, and domain specific language, because domain specific language should be based on concepts from the ontology. And more general question, how to provide coevolution, so corresponding changes without need to recreate a whole structure of domain specific language in case of changes in our ontology. And key idea is that when we tell about domain specific language, we should analyze its nature. So it's first of all connected with the domain, but its language, and as a result, we can combine some concepts from these ideas. Domain can give us some information about some facts in our application domain, and we can ask users of this application domain in order to create some knowledge which is useful for our task. And as a result, we can combine these ideas using such artifact as domain semantic model, which represents not only some entities of our domain, but also it contains some restrictions on its usage, contains some relations between them, also with some restrictions. So it's more general than conceptual model of our domain. And from the formal point of view, we can tell that domain semantic model contains a set of objects of our application domain and relations between them, and some additional details which I meant, for example, restrictions, some maybe formal limitations on it. So, but according to our idea, we can tell that domain semantic model has an object-oriented nature, and we can formalize it using object-oriented artifacts. On the other hand, ontology, which can be analyzed also as an artifact of our domain, also has an object-oriented nature and can be used as a domain semantic model for our purpose. On the other hand, when we tell about domain-specific languages, we take into account that it contains two parts, semantic and syntactic. Semantic is responsible for meaning of our operations in terms of syntactic part. So, and syntactic part in turn contains some objects which are equivalent to the sets of objects of the domain semantic model, and some operations on them which can be used to specify the context of our objects. As a result, we can tell that domain specific language can be represented in a similar to domain semantic model object-oriented view. We can represent it as a combination of entities, just our objects, and relation between them with a set of operations under our elements of objects. So on this stage, we can argue that both domain semantic model and domain specific language have similar, not the same, but similar object-oriented representation, and we can organize a transferring elements between them using, in our case, model-to-model transformations, because we tell about domain semantic model and also object-oriented representation or model-oriented representation of domain-specific language. So the question is how to organize such coevolution, such transformation between this model. And we should take into account more general definition of model. From the formal point of view, every model contains some entities and relation between them. From this point of view, evolution of the model is a process of changes in the structure, or in other words, in amount or in attributes of entities and relations between them. And we can classify the model evolutions as vertical and horizontal. Vertical evolution means that we change the layer of perspective of our model. So we add or drop some entities from it. And as a result, we also can change a set of relations between our entities. In contrast, horizontal evolution means saving our level of conceptualization, but changes in attributes of our entity. So in this case, we want to add some details to our representation, but we also can change and relations, because changing relations doesn't mean that we change of perspective, and we also can characterize it as horizontal evolution. So to formalize it, we can use such operations as transferring entities, relations, and attributes in both cases of evolution. And organizing it into three categories, we can tell that we have a close set of rules needed to organize all types of evolution. In this case, we doesn't take into account such operation as editing some entity or some attribute or relation, because from the formal point of view, we can organize editing operation as combination of delete and add operations. And as a result, we have some amount of rules, which, as I stressed, is closed, and we can use it for all types. And this set of operations organize some set of invariants, which can be used in our case. So from this point of view, when we tell about domain-specific language implementation, we can tell that, first of all, we formalize some problem in terms of our domain. After it, we create some, for example, graphic user interface to formalize some scenarios in our domain-specific language. And we also analyze it from the semantic and syntactic parts to organize checking procedure about original problem and our concrete language. So in this case, we tell about different types of transformations, model to model in our case, because we try to organize transformations not only on the layer of syntactic part of our language, but also on the layer of semantics. Because as I mentioned, objects are similar in case of syntaxes and semantics. And from this point of view, we can organize transformations between these parts using set of rules created earlier and identify our approach at the following stages. First of all, we identify the ontology, for example, in OWL description. After it, we try to identify some prototype of our domain-specific language metamodel. In our case, we use KM3 description as the most general description. After it, we define transformation rules, and it's important to stress that this set of rules is fixed for all types of transformations. And after it, we can apply our rules to organize the coevolution between ontology and domain-specific language metamodel. From the technical point of view, we can use the following technologies to organize such type of approach. In our case, we use Eclipse platform because it contains all needed plugins for definition of different types of domain-specific language. In article, we described, for example, visual part of the language, and now I want to focus more on textual part to create more general view on our approach and its application. So we tried to apply our approach in order to create domain-specific language, dynamic domain-specific language for railway allocation domain. This domain has a tendency to evolution because task of resource allocation is a real-time task, and as a result, we need to calculate any moment when, for example, new train is arriving, or maybe we have changed a set of service bridges or their specifications and other attributes of our resources. So a part of railway transportation ontology is demonstrated in the slide. So here we see all needed entities which represent different resources and other parts of our domain. After it, we should, according to our approach, create a metamodel for our domain-specific language. And at this stage, you can see that entities which are used for domain-specific language are similar to entities of our ontology. Just for example, we used such entity as train and transform it into the corresponding entity of domain-specific language metamodel, and also about servicing bridges and services in general. So there are some additional classes because we tell not only about entities, but and also about appointment when one concrete servicing bridge just organize some service for concrete train. And in this case, it's important to know the starting time of the service and end time of the service. So as a result, there are some technical additions to our scheme. And after it, we can use automative methods and plugins to create a grammatic prototype for our future domain-specific language. For example, in this case, we have prototypes for our operations to create different types of resources, such as trains, bridges, appointments, and other, and some operations or functions to manage our resources and to organize some movement of resources during the allocation process. All of these operations are connected with concrete type of resources. For example, operation relocate is connected to train, which is characterized by its ID train, and for example, railway, which is characterized by its ID new railway. So as a result, we can organize all types of domain-specific language scenarios in this case. But it's not so convenient for end user to operate such commands in case when we tell about large-scale railway station. And to improve this process, we created also domain-specific language, which is also subject-oriented because it contains only needed parts which are connected with our resources, represented at the panel of available objects, working area to organize some changes, for example, creation process of selected object, and time board to visualize our resource allocation at the current time, and its changes which are more appropriate for the future. And here we tell about some changes in case of our language and domain. It's important to stress that when we tell about evolution, as I mentioned, we tell not only about vertical evolution, but the horizontal also. And in the case of domain-specific language, we also can change not only amount or some characteristics of entities or objects used in some scenarios, but also some syntactic operations. For example, in this case, our user wants to add new operation into our domain-specific language to organize more convenient way of pointing some train and service bridge under the service. And in order to implement this operation, we can use special part of the interface, its evolution model, which is demonstrated in this slide and contains all needed parts for organizing our evolution. We can see the construction, which is implemented in our language, all available fields, which are connected with attributes of our entities, some amount of operations which can be used, and corresponding constraints, which in case of allocation problem are really important and should be characterized when we create some operation to check the possibility to organize such operation in terms of our domain. And what is more important, we can also characterize our operation by new entities. For example, in this case, we can add a new field if it's needed in the arrival time. So because in this case, when we tell about process some train by our service bridge, we want to know a starting and finishing time of this operation. So we should create some new characteristics for our training flow, and we can add it dynamically without need to identify the whole structure of domain-specific language. It's possible because when we tell about organizing such evolution, we use earlier defined rules of transformation and transform our language in terms of the models. So we don't tell that this approach is fully automated. No, it's only allowed to automate this process of changes in the domain-specific language because the user is needed to identify, for example, the structure of our operation. And we can't identify it without asking professionals from our domain, because only they can characterize the most appropriate way and the most appropriate structure for our operation. So, but the main prong of this approach is that we can use created operations and attributes, structures, objects without need to recreate our language. So we don't need to ask some programming skills in order to organize our evolution. And in this case, we tell about more effective manner for organizing evolution between the domain and domain-specific language. The main idea is that we organize changes using more general representation of domain-specific language and more general definition of its evolution using model-to-model transformation. To improve this approach and organize the whole model-driven domain-specific language lifecycle, we need to organize some more instruments to define more complex behavior for the user. For example, combination of some operations to create groups of operations and implement the versification mechanism not only at the layer of syntactic part of our language, but also on the layer of the semantics. It's useful from the point of view that we can create not only different dialects of the language using one concrete semantic model, but we also can organize evolution of such models, and we can organize its transformation between themselves in order to improve the quality of integration, not only dialects of domain-specific language, but also its semantic part. So thank you for your attention, and I will be glad to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Boris, for the great presentation. And so, colleagues, questions from the audience? Boris, in the meantime, that colleagues are thinking about questions and they are probably trying to unmute themselves. Sometimes unmuting takes time. I remember yesterday, a colleague of us couldn't unmute himself all day long. So in the meantime, Boris, would you be so kind to go to slide number 22 or slide number 30? Both of these slides are interesting slides.
Just
22.
22?
Yes.
Yeah.
22. Okay. Can you please walk us through this slide in terms of when you say user in original problem, how this original problem is formulated? Is this coming in what form this original problem is coming? And also, if you speak about this GUI, which you also revisited in slide 30, do you have this tool already developed? It's already an existing tool, or it is in some prototype?
So yeah, it's existing tool, and we can use it to formulate the task using different parts in this concrete domain, so railway allocation problem. But when we tell about more general approach to formulate the task of a user, so now we need to organize some interviewing process with specialists of the domain. So we can't just automate it using our existing tools, but in the future we want to create some more general description model. So in order to formulate it, for example, in this case, using some distributed resource allocation problem terms. So, but for other domains, it's open question, and we need some more formal approach, I think.
Boris, before we go back to slide 22 here, when you say it is, yes, developed and it is in use for railways, can I use this also for other domains? Or when you say railways, you are referring to this red box, which means that the available objects, they are basically developed for a railway domain. And if you want to use it for other domains, this objects or library of objects should be developed. Is this what you are referring? Or you say, no, this tool is only specifically developed for railways?
So now we can add some new objects. So as I mentioned, for example, in this case, a user added new attribute to training for object, and we can use it also using the graphic user interface. But we can't apply it to other problems. So for example, in this case, all objects and all libraries of objects which can be defined by the user can be used only for resource allocation problem, not for other problems.
Okay.
So, but we can apply it to other domains.
Okay, perfect. That was it. So it's so you can use it for other domains. I must say it's a very interesting tool, and the approach or the process in slide number 22 is so straightforward, and it makes life of system developers or modelers so easy. Like you can parse it and get semantic model, or you can and that semantic model that, by the way, you also showed, I think it was and maybe subsequent slides when you had the object semantic model, the semantic model, you had it, I think it was a few slides later. You had like those hierarchy of the objects, like from, hey, there is a station and then station has train. How did you this one? How did you derive this? Is it manually or it is parsed automatically?
In this case, for definition of original domain semantic model, we use just manual tools.
Okay.
So you should create because it's the first stage of our approach. All other stages can be automated.
So that's the question. So basically, you say that potentially you can derive this schema automatically by just filling and creating attributes and creating relationship between objects. You could render this automatically, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, but this one is not done automatically.
Yeah,
this one is
because because we should check just that our rules are appropriate for every type of relation, for every type of entity. So we should prove it, and in this case we use this model created manually to check our approach in general.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Boris. I don't want to take much time because participants might have a question, and I also still have to check if the authors of the third papers, they are here. Although by the number of participants, I did not see increase in numbers, but still I have to check that. Do we have authors or speakers for the third paper usability? Do we?
Yes, I am here. It's me.
Okay, perfect.
I'm smiling too, so I should present now. So if you give me time.
Yes, Joseph, that would be perfect. And my apologies that some of your time is already taken. So okay, Boris, you did a great job. Any question, just maybe one last question for Boris before we move to the third presentation? No questions. Well, still you can use chat room or follow up. Thank you very much, Boris. Joseph, you can go ahead and share the screen and present your paper.
Okay, I can start. So I hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect.
And we can hear you, we can see you, so you can go ahead.
Okay, so hello, ladies and gentlemen. So I will stop my face camera because my internet connection is not so strong. And there is another problem. I look much more smart and the camera probably is broken. So I don't know why is the terrible face there. So we can start. So my presentation is about using usability technologies for testing quality of modeling standards. We choose two methodologies, BPMN and BORM. And the team is built from, say, people. This is from head of, this is my name, Joseph Pavlíček, Martin Roth, and Petra Pavlíčková. She's my wife, she's here with me, but she will need to run because we are in some time pressure. So I try to be a little bit brief. So what was the study problem? We were thinking about ideas, what is user-friendly business process modeling standards, which is great, what we can understand very easy, useful, and very powerful for the people who are modeling something, some general processes. We put another question: what is significant benefit of business process model notation from the term of usability? I mean, this is very, very important to thinking about that, and I will explain a little bit later why. What is significant on the BORM, because BORM is a very clear object-oriented methodology, and this is really very good technology, which brings de facto not identical, but which brings some specific view on the processes too, but brings some new technologies, new approaches in comparison with BPMN, but BPMN is still the standard. I want to define where is appropriate to use BPMN and when to use the BORM. I want to say that this is not competition about these both approaches, because we are not making some match and matching them who is better and how many points get. The idea is to find the optimal areas where these technologies to use, yeah, and how we did it. At first, we need to define some attribute of measurements which we will be using. We decided to follow Mr. Jakob Nielsen and his group, Norman group, because this is a very famous group who cares about usability generally, and big benefit is that they are very close to the standard, international standard, ISO 25066. And there we are talking about attributes like learnability, efficiency, memorability, and satisfaction, which from our experience, because we are working on this problem many years, who follow our presentation on MOBA and today on the MOBA, you can know that we are very long time working on the usability technologies for business process models. So the learnability is from our experience very important subject, because we need to know how easy it is for user to accomplish some basic task, and how much time the user spend during he start to be working with this theoretical technology. It's not usability is a general term. This is not only for, of course, not for business models. This is for all of de facto existing computers technologies, but it could be done for packaging too. So you can discuss about usability of TVs, for example. So this is a really very general term, and we try to map this learnability to the models. How easy is to understand the models? How easy is to use the models? Not the tool which are you using, but I mean the model. This is maybe important to tell. There is another attribute. This is efficiency, which says logically how is the modeler effective if he is working with this technology. Very important is memorability. This is for business models important, because there exist some specific constructions, like we discussed about them 2 years ago, where we put significant answers that, for example, iteration and loops at the models brings a problem to understandability, to understand what happens there. And if you do some easy process, which is probably clear, which is going step by step, this is much more easier for understanding than if there exist some loops and some specific shapes or objects. And this is the problem of memorability, to understand how the objects are working on the studied problem, and how the user who are using that is able to return back after some time period and understand the problem. And there, the last one is satisfaction, which is really important for today, because today we have a lot of technologies which we can choose for finishing some specific task. Very important for us is satisfaction. If I'm pleased to use the system, I'm happy to use it. If not, I hate it and I'm moving it out. So this is from usability theory. And now which method we used? We decided to use usability testing, which is specific kind of test where we are going through some testing scenario. And we used collaborative approach with cognitive walkthrough. Cognitive walkthrough is a specific mechanism where we are going through the specific task and we are watching how the participants, people who are helping us to evaluate the final solution, how they are able to accomplish the task, and we don't guiding them, we don't telling them what they should do. This is a little bit different with heuristic approach, and the collaborative is important for us because collaborative, we mean that the people are doing the same task in the group, each one separately, but they are sitting in the group, and if there exists some problems which are blocking the user understanding the problem, the group start to be collaborating and start to be discussing. And this is big signal for us that there is some problem. The collaborative approach we developed with my colleague Rudolf Bock, and we presented it in previous years and almost two. So this is a specific approach. And if we are going into the more details, we did usability test according to usability testing rules. This is explanation the people what they will be doing, checking their results and discussing with them. So this is putting some study questions. We need to understanding the answers of them. We need to define if it's true what they tell us or not. If they are making mistakes, the people very often making mistakes, but they don't know about that. So they can tell you this process, for example, is easy to understand, but finally we found that they are not able to understand it. They don't understand the problem. They saying that this is okay, but they don't understand in the real. So this is important for us to understand if the answers was true, was correct. And very important at the final study was interviews where we are going to make interview with participants, and we discuss about what is really great for this technology, which is explicitly wrong, and what are the recommendations. For this study, we need to have appropriate infrastructure. The infrastructure, we used a laboratory of collaborative usability testing. This is a laboratory, looks like this schema. There is the 10 seats with this specific shapes desk, and in the middle of the desks are computers with face camera, or exactly a recordings cameras, which are checking how the people are going through the screen and checking their eye movement. And this is very important for us for this study. During the study, there exists some specific interesting effects. Typically, there is uncertainty. If something is wrong, participants don't finishing their task because they are missing the mental capacity. It could be, this is very often, but there could be some error at the testing scenario. There exists disruption where the participants are surprised if the answer of the system is something strange and change and influence their concentration. There are blocks. They are not able to continue because they were blocking via some specific problem. There exists frustration. The people are unhappy to use the task. They are not able to finish the process. So we can study it. And there are another specific behavior like heuristic behavior, cognitive behaviors. Now let's go to the usability task scenario. We use a few scenarios. This is only example of one of them. There was two easy process. There is going through registration on Turkish Airlines and scenario for exam registration. And this is the typical easy paper or scenario, which we have to put the participants and discuss with the participants how they will be finishing each from these 10 steps. And we are recording their faces, their behavior, we are checking their answers, and all we are completing. And finally, we are discussing how the description of this process was great, what is typically wrong, what should be better. And we are able to recognize final feeling of the participants. Of course, the final interview help us to understand their feelings. I need to say that all research is qualitative, and the number of participants is a little bit small, but this is not a problem, because from the theory there exists some. I will use my pen. Maybe I hope you are able to see this screen. If we draw on the paper, there are axis of participants and number of bugs. There are bugs. So Norman defined that the shape or function of finding bugs looks like this one. And there is optimal point, and this optimal point is approximately 8 participants in qualitative study. If we have 8 participants, we are able to find approximately 85% of bugs which exist at the UI. We are not able very quickly find more, because there the function is very slowly going up. So if we want to find this approximately 20%, we need to testing with very big number of people. But this is probably not the main problem for us, because the most number of bugs we are able to find with approximately 8 participants. And thanks, if you will be reading our paper, you can read that we use 10 participants for each usability test which we did. So it was qualitative usability research. There is example of the same process, which is draw via BPMN. This is on the left side, and worm. And if we jump into another slide, unfortunately, we do not have very high quality objects. We can see record from the eye camera, and this is from eye camera, which follows how the people are going through the business process model, and where are the places where the participants spend some time. And we can see that these big red balloons, and these balloons tell us that this place is for the participants quite strange, because he is or she is watching on this area a longer time. The start is easy. He is going very quickly. You can see that this down is not following the camera. Unfortunately, is not very accurate, as there is some distortion, of course. But this red balloon probably should be located in this rectangle, because there is a lot of text and some specific shape, and the participant A is probably are not able to understand what is written there, and saying that he is spending more time there. And the second one is the participant B. We can see that there is thinking what means this decision object, and after that the participant is jumping on the symbol of database. If we use this iRecordings cameras, videos, and result from the interviews and another techniques which we use, this is papers fill via the participants, we can make some qualitative decisions. There is example of another participant on the form. We can see that there is visible how the participant is going through the screen. Sometimes, of course, there could happen some distortion. The camera is not 100% exact, of course. Sometimes the participant is disturbing from some problem outside. He needs to look outside the screen, so it could jump on another places. But still, we can see that there are correlation between some balloons which are growing up. And this is typical, this login into personal administration of the US, and there is the symbol of these shapes. After that, the participant finish it. After that is faster. So I promise that I will be. I try to be brief, so I will jump to the conclusion. So what we can say that in general, BPMN is easy to use and understandable in general for non-technical people. Probably, I think this correlate with our hypothesis, because this is very common used and very famous technology. BPMN is intuitive, and there exists some there is orientation. This is oriented chart, so there is intuitive and directive to the shapes. The shapes like rectangles, diamonds, star rings, and end rings are typical for today, so this is easy to understand. Of course, there exists some mechanism which can be helpful, like colorizing some shapes, but this is not explicit BPMN standard. So for that is very good. In opposite side, the BORM is very good for software analysts. Typically, if we try to understand the object-oriented approach, and we need to understand the object-oriented paradigm. I want to say that if you will be for example, modeling process of ordering some ticket on the parking place, is a good idea to use BPMN. Because for all people it will be easy. If you want to describe object behavior of some process, like the processes are sending some messages between them, and there is some interaction. In this case, is from our research, better to use BORM technology, because easy or better is following the object paradigm. So this is in the conclusion all, and I can, if you want, you can place us some questions or Eva's question.
Great. Thank you very much, Joseph. Let me make sure that my camera is functioning. So give me 1 second. It was a great presentation. Enjoyed it enormously, very clear, and the purpose, everything. The two popular modeling languages are compared from different perspectives, from usability to ease of understanding, and from richness of capturing. All is great. I just want to make one confession that because of some late arrivals, we are 7 minutes over the scheduled time. So this is a confession. I'm not saying we are closing the session. I'm just saying that we are 7 minutes, and now I'm asking any questions that you have for Joseph and his co-author.
Yes, Joseph, may I? Pavel Molozhenkov.
Hi, Pavel.
Hello, Joseph. Just one question I'm, let's say I'm mostly interested in is when we are talking about the usability and when we use the mechanism of eye tracking that you propose, how do you think, what are the perspectives of using this mechanism in understanding the usability not of BPMN or some other type of notations, but the usability of a certain information system and the grade of its usability on the base of the sharing of the shared languages between the user and the developer of the system? How do you think, is it possible to apply the mechanism of eye tracking to solving the problem?
Yes, thanks for your question. I think this is a very good idea. I mean that thanks to the COVID situation today, there was developed a lot of technologies where we can make usability study remotely with specific computers. Today we have edge camera like I have now in my computer with eye tracking system which are free for use. One from these tools we developed in Czech Technical University, for example, and we can make usability studies remotely. And if we have remote, if we are able to bring this technology in family computers, in the notebooks, I think it's very easy to turn it into using some another problems, like for example, like you said, the study some using some languages. You told about usability of languages, right?
Yes, I mean the degree of the sharing of the language. If you know, when you use the eye tracking system and when you analyze the time that the user needs to understand the interface that the developer has previewed, it may let us make some conclusion about how the system is understandable to the user.
Yeah.
So how is it used?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yes, for that is usable. I mean, I think very, very easy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions for Joseph? Joseph, you used collaborative approach, and that collaborative approach was you set up a lab. You set up a lab with PCs and then cameras and people working. What is that collaboration? What was the collaborative element?
Yeah, I will try to explain that. I will return back to my presentation. There is the collaborative approach. It's quite new one. Mean that the people who are at the usability study are sitting in the same area and they can be working together. They are doing the same task in the same time. This is a totally different approach in standard usability testing. Standard usability testing is about one person who is sitting at the room, only one participant, and observers are sitting outside. And in this approach, which developed me and my colleague Rudolf, is that we have more people in one room, and we are following if there exists some communication between them. Because the communication we start, it means that there is some problem. Problem in UI, problem in interface, maybe problem in the test. But if the people is sitting alone and he understands that another people are watching him, he is a little bit stressed and he put more effort to finish the task if there is group and the group is working a little bit differently. We know that group dynamic is a little bit different than only one people. One people has a different behavior than group, and if there are people and more peoples or participants had the same problem, they're starting to discussion between them, and we are much more quickly able to find the problem. And this is a collaborative approach.
Okay,
we are
perfect.
working with more people. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Frankly speaking, I have more questions, and also I have like 2-3 sources that I can connect you to, very similar works that you might benefit from them. But on the other hand, I also know that the time is, so colleagues, they probably need to break before we coming back to our closing session. So I will just go one more round if there are any questions among the participants, to see that we do not leave any question or comments unheard. And then we will gradually move to the closure of the session and see each other in 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, we will have a panel, and that will be closing the session and also summarizing the session. And that will also set the stage for future, how to say, of this workshop. As you know that the workshop started as UMass, now the workshop is seizing on new research and application opportunities in the horizon of agile practice. So all this discussion will happen at 4 p.m. European time. So colleagues, if no other comments and question, Pavel, I think we close this session and we reopen it at 4 p.m., right? Or we